there's one effort that I'm actually involved in that is very much directed at exactly what you've talked about. There is a disconnect today between traditional financial reporting, which results in the kind of profit picture you've talked about, and the long-term impact of what are today externalities and costs that are external to the company. And so there's a group that's formed called the IIRC, the International Integrated Reporting Council, which is attempting to develop a standard against which a holistic look at the sustainable impact and sustainable performance of the company could be reported, and can do so across sort of countries. And so there is a global effort. It was formed a couple of years back when Prince Charles from the UK, who is very involved in a group called Accounting for Sustainability, integrated efforts with a group led by Mervyn King from South Africa called the Global Reporting Initiative. And a bunch of the accounting firms and a bunch of the securities regulators and a bunch of investors are all banding together to try to develop this kind of standard to try to prevent exactly what you've talked about.
So it's all an accounting problem.
No, it's not.
So right over here, and then we're going to come to the front next, but if we can get a microphone over here.
Hi, my name is Jessica Ross. I'm actually completing my master's degree in Israel in organizational behavior through a Masad program. My question is for Yudit. You talked a lot about the culture in Israel and the challenges that management faced within this culture, and I'm just wondering if, as a female manager, if there are any specific challenges that do arise within Israel and any advantages associated with this culture.
Wow. I can be very honest with you. It's really changed in Israel. I belong to the older generation. Although I was qualified as 26 years old, I just mentioned that I'm still 26 years old, but you can multiply it in different ways. Okay. I didn't experience myself as a woman in the workplace. I was very often the only woman, but I'm very task-oriented, and that's what focused me. If there were any comments, I never listened to it. I didn't care about them. I'm very much similar to that person. I had my ego. My ego was completing the tasks. And if I can suggest to anybody that, I think follow what you believe in it and complete every mission that you want to do. All the other comments or relating to you, you don't own them, the other person owns them. You are not there to be therapist for everybody around you, okay? So that's one thing. The other thing, I think these days it changed a lot. I can share with you a joke. Somebody once called us and asked us if there are some minorities from different countries in Israel, and my deputy said, just a minute, I'm looking around, yes, there are some minorities, men, okay? So in my place, there is no differentiation. But I'm realizing that the aspirations have been changed. There are more women who want to and more men who approve it. So I think that for me, I'm not a feminist. I'm just doing what I believe in. And if I could suggest to you, go with what you believe in. Focus on that. Unless you decide that helping other women is your mission, that's okay as well. I bless all those who did it. Maybe they did it for my daughters-in-law or people around me. But I think in Israel, in management, we have good chances.
Hi, my name's Steve. I just graduated with a master's. I live in Washington, D.C. And after I graduated, I noticed that myself, along with many of my peers, came out of school all prepared for a 9-to-5 job. But as you said earlier, those 9-to-5 jobs it's something of the past. And I set out to kind of start what I truly believed in. Now I run a nonprofit that brings college students to their national policymakers. And one of the things that we've realized is that a lot of these students are being prepared for the 9-to-5 job, but their mindset is towards starting up their own businesses. So what would you say to the young generation, the people that are telling me that I'm the next leader of tomorrow? What would you say for those leaders coming out of school who are being prepared for these 9-to-5 jobs but don't want to go into them?
Let me make one comment on the, I'll say something about, I'm not sure I know what to say here, but Israel, the GDP of Israel increased by 4.5% in the last 35 years, per year, per annum. And probably the most important reason for this was women. Because women were about 25% of the work, of the labor force in Israel 35 years ago. They are a half today, and that's what Israel is all about. So I think that we should thank all the women here, and I think it's important to look at it. At my home, our own family is run by my wife and my daughter. They tell me what to do, and I'm failing a lot there. I don't do much there. So I think women, I agree with what Judith said here before. Let me come back to you. What we try to, when people come to our school to study, we do not try to teach them 9-to-5. I don't know you in person, so I cannot give you a prescription what to do, because there is no one prescription. It depends on you, what you want to do in life, what you are good at, and so on and so forth. But we try to stress in our school, and I hope we do it well, at least we try to do it well, is that you go out, the world is there, and if you have good education, you try hard, you take responsibility, then do whatever you think you can do for your own, and take responsibility. I think the reason many Israelis are good in entrepreneurship is not because they were in good technology units in the army. A study that was concluded a couple of years ago actually showed that most startups are started by graduates of the IDF who were not in technology units. It's the ability to take responsibility. At a very young age, they tell you, you go and do that, and come back with an output when you are 19, 20 years old. Once you learn how to do it, and you do it, and you fail several times, but not too big, I think you can do it. The world is yours. You can do whatever you want to do. So the idea in business schools is we should facilitate and enhance, not teach you how to lead. Because if you're not a leader, we cannot teach you to be a leader. We can give you tools, vocabulary. We can stress what is ahead of you in the next 15 years so you know what to expect and don't get surprises. But again, it's up to you to succeed.
Let me just mention there's a term we use at the World Economic Forum we sometimes call a tri-sector athlete. And it refers to professionals, experts, skilled individuals who would like to work, who have worked, or are capable of working in either the private sector and or government and or the social sector, the nonprofit world. And there's very much a notion that the skills you need to do well in each of them may be slightly different, but they're related. It's around problem solving, it's around entrepreneurship, it's around management, it's around people skills and the like. And I mention this because I would guess that regardless of whether you're in that 9-to-5 job, which I thought you meant sort of the private sector job, I think those jobs are changing just like the NGO jobs are changing, just like the government jobs need to change, maybe are starting to change. And so the skills that are needed are almost universal. And I think it's better to think about the skills you need to succeed in different environments as opposed to 9-to-5 versus 24/7. For everyone, it's moving to 24/7, and I think that's the trend.
Kevin, there's one other thing that when I talk to a bunch of young people, such as yourself, I think people have to find something they have a passion for. And hopefully they'll find something that their skills line up with what they have a passion for. And then from my perspective, it's if you could find an organization that does what will enable you to do what you're passionate about, and an organization that is really focused on where the world is going, whether it's the capital shifts we've talking about, whether it's the demographic shifts we've talking about, that's ideal. If you can't find an organization that's attuned to the world and where it's going, not where it's been, but where it's going, that lets you do what you're passionate about, that's when you ought to go off on your own and form your own gig. And so that's the way I think about it.
Pass it down to Matt.
I was just going to add one thing, and I agree with the comments that were stated. It's, I think it's always important in your career, right, that you're working with, on projects that you're passionate about, that you're skilled to go do. You're working with people you like to work with, right, as well. And that's, I think, another aspect of this evolving culture, that people want to work with teams that they enjoy working with. And then the last ingredient, and I, speaking right on the subject of, balance and integrated life, faith, family, work, right, is to have mentors. People who help you, and particularly early in your career, right? I think that's one of the most valuable things that you could have, is those people who are helping guide you, right? Encouraging you, correcting you when you're wrong, and really helping you make those decisions along the way.
Great. We're going to run low on time, so we'll try for shorter questions and shorter answers to squeeze in whatever we can. So right over
Thank you. Fascinating session. I'm a PhD from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in public health and a social entrepreneur. I'm involved in health leadership, but I'm actually wanting to ask you about your own homes. I'm curious about the role of parents in preparing for tomorrow's managers, and if you are willing not just to share your general opinions, but also to share with us how do you prepare your own kids to be the managers of the tomorrow. Thank you.
Well, I'll take a quick answer. People have asked me whether I had role models with my father. He was a very respected business leader in St. Louis, Missouri, where we grew up. And so I grew up, watching him interact with people like the parking attendants in the garage, people like this was a time long ago when I was a 6-year-old, watching him know the name of the elevator attendant who was taking him up, and seeing how he respected everybody in the organization, not just sort of the senior management that worked for him. And so we all learn things from our families, and so these are things you try to pass on.
Professionally, I'm not knowledgeable in what you say, so I'll skip.
I think that for me, the experience of learning from my father, that you have to respect everybody around you, was a major source for my strength going around with people and asking them to do some things and leading them. Now, I think that in Israel there is a very nice field to grow leaders. One of them is the youth movement. And if you are dealing with this kind of issues, I find it very, very rare in the world to find an infrastructure of such a strong belonging to youth movement that grows people to be leaders. Now, later in Israel, you know about the military service. Now, the IDF is, again, a fantastic background to grow people, to take responsibility and lead others. In our, we also are aware about it, that it's a very good, let's say, in infrastructure for knowledge, but as Professor Tischler just presented to you, it's not only startups that grow up from that background. And because we were asked to be short, I'm going to quote what my wish from the IDF to happen. And I will quote from the Bible that we would have hope that the IDF would go on and train people, but at that time they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And that's my dream.
I was just going to say very quickly, 3 things that I learned from my parents, right? One was a passion for education, right? Working very hard, and the utmost integrity, and do the right thing. And I think those 3 things I've worked hard to pass on to my children. And I think if every parent did those 3 things with their kids, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, my name is Avital Brown. I work in my company with a partner, consulting and training of management. And my question is to you, Judith, because one of the things that you said at the beginning that characterize the Israeli managers or people that work is the devotion. Now, I want to tie it to the whole notion of the Generation X, when they need, and ask you, from your experience, do you see that devotion is is weaker with the younger people that would work passionate for something that they're passionate about, but will probably have a very short span attention if they do some things that they do not like to do?
I agree with the question. There is room for this question, whether they have less passion. But my answer would be that they are, although they are much more narcissists, that's what I observe at least, they are really devoted. When they want something, they are very focused and very devoted. So maybe it's not such a long-run devotion, but it's total extreme devotion to what they believe in and they want to do. So the issue of, I think what you're bringing up is the issue of loyalty and the issue of longer commitment to organization, not to the mission that they believe in. And I think I've been blessed. We teach each of our workers that each product that we manufacture is life of an individual. So I see that by the culture that we present to them, there is very high level of devotion. And I think that if you can personalize the product that you are working on, even if it's a mobile phone, it's not an issue of the heart, you can get a lot of devotion.
I'm trying to squeeze in two more, so one here, one over there, and then...
I want to make one comment on this. I think there are a lot of technology changes in the world that affect our lives, and it seems like we change. We don't change. Today, not change much at least. I think technology changes so fast, you have to adapt. So it seems like young people are impatient. They are not impatient. They have to follow very quickly changing organizations. So I don't think it has to do with devotion or impatience. It's the same like I teach in my class. A lot of people say that the Jewish family is falling apart. It's not. Today we have a mortgage, so you don't have to stay home when you are young, and we have a pension, so you don't have to be with your children when you are old. So everything falls apart, but it's technology that changes us. So I think it's not the people. The people are better today than they were in the past. And it seems they are not. I think they are. It's technology that changes us very quickly.
Right over here, please.
My name is Tami Avigdor. I'm also working with Avital on consulting and training for manager. I would like to ask you about leadership. And do you agree that there is still poor leadership in many organizations? And this is, for me, as a number one for success for companies. And I see that companies pay attention more to business and how to, beat competition and how to do this and that, and change and everything. And leadership doesn't get enough attention. So first of all, a question to Asher. Do you think in the MBA program you put more attention these days to these topics versus just business and economic? And also to your companies, do you invest a lot in leadership? Are you happy with the leadership that you see growing in your companies? And just one comment, I still hear from many HR managers that number one reason for people to leave their company is the direct manager. So how do you deal with this?
Okay. I don't think we can teach leadership. I think the idea that the world is very complicated, changes very quickly, and people are much more knowledgeable. 60 years ago, Ben-Gurion could say, follow me, I'm right. We followed him, and we were right. Now, if a leader says, follow me, most of us are much more knowledgeable than this person who is talking to us, so we don't follow this guy. So the idea, I think, government leadership has a big problem, certainly in Israel for quite some time. So I don't want to comment on it. I don't know how to solve the problem. Within firms, I think we do much better. And I think you have to, in Israeli economy is doing quite well because we have more and more better managers, A good manager must be a good leader. It works together. So I think we have to teach the concept of leadership through every course in our curriculum and not in a leadership course. You can also give a leadership course, but in finance and strategy and accounting, everything, the idea is you have to do it right. To do it right is to be a good leader.
With apologies, I know there's a number of you waiting. I said there's one more question here, and then we'll have a final thought perhaps from each of our panelists. So right over here,
Ariel Beery from the President's Group. We train social entrepreneurs around the world. The question goes back to the issue of the people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and the responsibility of managers and firms in this age. Specifically because, as all of us know, that demographic is the largest demographic currently going into periods of retirement. Folks like my parents lose their jobs and aren't being rehired by firms who are trying to get people for cheaper in their 20s. I'd like to know what you think the responsibility of managers and firms are, especially in this age in which we're looking at stakeholders, not only shareholders, and what we as business leaders need to do in order to ensure that individuals have dignity in their later stages of life and can continue to bring money back as their lives are maintained by modern medicine.
As I said earlier, I think the responsibility, and I think Asher and I agreed on this, is to work as hard as humanly possible to train people to continue to develop skills that they will feel good about deploying in your organization, and to do everything humanly possible to get all people to be the most productive they can be, and then to, very importantly, put each of your people in a role where he or she can win and feel successful. And I think if you both, pair the training with the proactive thinking around how do I get people in a role that is a positive contributor and where they're not having to sort of apologize to themselves or to the firm about not doing something well, I think then you've got a real success.
Because we're out of time, maybe one last thought from each of you, just a parting thought for the audience, and we'll wrap up.
So I think the ending on the leadership thought on this as we started with management, is a great way to end. And leadership is never enough, right? And I think today in this increasingly connected, technology turbulent world, right, the opportunities that leaders play and the significance of their impact. And just look, as we, have seen the passing of Steve Jobs, right? While there's many characteristics of him that were terrible, right? He was an incredible leader that had enormous impact that we'll be feeling for many years. So I think that's a great way to end.
Definitely leadership is important in the business world, and I think especially in the issue of strategy. In my family, we usually say strategy is the definition of the leader of all his past success. For the future, he has or she has still to wait. So leadership is judged backwards, not so much forwards. If somebody succeeds, you say he or she was a good leader. If not, you just ignore it. But it's very, very clear to me that the cohort of business is the leaders. And the cohort of leadership is vision. And the cohort of vision is just a dream. Thank you.
Well, I'm last. I agree with all of them. I think they gave very good answers. I cannot do something very well in 1 minute, so I'll just skip.
And I would just point out, as important as leadership is, there is no leadership without followership. And so one has to really engage actively with the entire workforce and earn their respect every day, not because he or she has a title, but through their actions.
Maybe a comment about the government. I'm usually not very happy about my government when it comes to leadership. I don't have a solution for them, but it seems to me in Israel, the private sector is doing quite well and improving. And if we had good leadership in the government, we would grow at 6.5% a year, not 4.5%, and with much less inequality, which is also very important. There are problems in regulations, and maybe one thing we ought all of us to stress is we need more knowledge in the government. We need our leaders to understand that they have to have more knowledge and listen to us. They don't necessarily, because they are very good in game theory and they know what the equilibrium is. And I think to break it, and I think that I have nothing to add about the private firms, this was said, but we have to think more how we make our government try to lead more, which it doesn't in the last several years.
Great. Well, given the range of insightful comments, I won't try to wrap it up, but thank you very much to our distinguished panel. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time and thoughts.